Hi there, I'm Danny Henderson. Welcome back to my full disclosure channel. Today we're going to go into some fairly difficult subjects that most of you are aware of, and if you're not aware of them, you will be by the end of this broadcast. The lady on the screen is my beautiful friend, Gloria Masters. She's been on my channel maybe six, seven, eight times, maybe more. She's so well known for her huge global brand, Handing the Shame Back. Every time I've said that, I've got it wrong. Gloria, did I get it right?
Yes.
The panic of getting it wrong, being dyslexic and putting words around the wrong way, handing the shame back. She works with her partner alongside in life and love, and this is Detective Inspector Scott Beard. Welcome, sir, to my channel. It's an honor to meet you.
Thank you, Danny, and thank you for the invite. Obviously, I have to. Queen G says, "Come on, we're going on doing a podcast." Yes, Mum.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
yes,
Yes,
no,
mom.
yes, mom. Yes, mom,
Yeah.
indeed. Well done. Men out there, pay attention, you losers. This is how you take care of a queen. No, do you know, people are going to be so happy to see that Gloria has a good man worthy of her, truly. I'm letting you know, Mr. Scott Beard here. Now, before we come back into your story, you are a detective inspector, senior in New Zealand, but you are here representing yourself, Scott Beard, the man who works alongside Gloria Masters in handing the shame back. We are to make that definition. But Scott, please introduce the work that you have been doing over the last 45 years in child abuse arenas. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Danny, I joined the New Zealand Police in 1980, and when I joined the Criminal Investigation Branch in 1986, you do all your training, and in 1989, I first started working in child abuse. And since that time, I have been a detective on the child abuse teams. I've worked in other areas, but I've been a detective sergeant on the child abuse team in charge in the Takapuna area of North Shore in Auckland. And when I was promoted to detective senior sergeant, and I know in the UK you don't have that rank, you go detective sergeant, detective inspector. But when I was promoted to detective senior sergeant, I was again in charge of the child abuse team, the child exploitation team, and then as a detective inspector, I'm sort of another rank up, but I'm still have that role of the child abuse team, the child exploitation, which is all the online offending. And since 2016, when New Zealand introduced the uh, sex offender register, and we've had a team that look after those persons on the sex offender register. So I'm in charge of that team as well. So and I have other roles to play in my work, but yeah, and then some homicides will come along, and it depends on the nature of them as to whether I'm involved or whether I leave my staff involved. And I think a lot of your viewers may well have sort of recognised me, the English girl Grace Mullane, who travelled to New Zealand and was murdered. I ran that investigation and was the face of the media for New Zealand Police.
Oh, can you remind people about Sweet Grace?
Yeah, so Grace grew up in Essex, just out of London, and yeah, she'd gone on at OE. She was a lovely girl from a lovely family, and she'd come to New Zealand, and she'd met a person on Tinder, and just the worst case scenario, she was murdered.
So you were seen on British TV, hence the connection to working in this country in Britain.
Yeah, and yeah, and then as I say, I've with my role within child abuse world, I deal a lot with the likes of our social welfare services, our Auckland District Health Board, and I've done some research projects around child abuse. And yeah, I do a lot of relate relationship work at the high level, and then it was just through I was invited to it was a filming of a movie from the United States on sex trafficking, and I was invited to that, and Gloria happened to be on the panel.
Mm.
And I didn't know her at that stage, never met her. But afterwards, I did buy some of her books, and then we just, just I once the connection handing the shame back, and so we were just in touch and we were talking about different things, and then she asked me to come on to her podcast, and I was interviewed there. And I suppose just one thing led to another, and now guess what?
How you love each other. I think that's just adorable and beautiful, especially to come together in such the absolute worst case scenario, the worst elements of humanity. They're just inhuman, and yet it's through that and your work to defend and help children, people and young adults, etc. You found each other, and that's just so beautiful. And of course, it makes you so much stronger. And dear Gloria Masters has been running her, her brand. I don't like to say the word brand, but it's important because there are so many important signals attached to the work that she does. And Gloria, her broadcast, her podcast, she interviews many survivors. And one of the most endearing and compassionate things that Gloria says is, "I believe you. I stand with you. I believe you," which is the lifeboat. Ah, I see you and I stand beside
Yeah.
you. Yeah, see, that's just, I believe you. Oh my gosh, you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Love
got
it.
t-shirts.
Yeah.
Ah, you see, but that right there, that is a life raft between someone deciding whether to take the life raft or take their own self off, and we all know that's true. So yeah, for someone to say, "I believe you, I stand with you," etc., is so empowering. Gloria, let's talk a bit about the last 18 months and your great work. Tell us what's been happening and how things have expanded.
Well, thanks, Danny, and thanks for having me back on the show with this young man beside me. Um, yeah, so look, it's the podcast has grown. When I first started that, I think I had three followers for probably the first 4 months, and it was just in New Zealand. We're now in 95 countries, and there are many survivors across the globe who listen to it, watch it, and seem to get some support and help from it. So it's a great honour and very humbling to do that. So that's growing. We also have, as you know, the third book, Keeping Kids Safe, came out, and that's being picked up as well and being used in schools. So, because of that mutual friend of ours, thank you, Danny, she very kindly donated and made it possible for every school in our country to have a copy. So we know that it's being used and it's being regarded as a resource, and gives teachers, I think, some confidence to talk about and deal with a subject like a child who's been sexually abused, and some potential steps on how to help them. And then I guess the other thing, because there's always so much, the other thing is we decided we really needed to get this word out more because, for survivors like me who are adult survivors, and hello, lovely ones out there, I'm always standing with you. Um, it's also really important that we have a protection arm as well. So Handing the Shame Back in the last 6 months has been working hard to find ways to spread the word. And because Scott and I do so much, or so much of his work is aligned with what our purpose and ethos is, we approached and said, "Would you consider being our ambassador for the Global Hand Sign?" And he said, "Yes." So now we're just running to keep up, aren't we?
Yes.
With all the approaches and all the work we're doing. So yeah, very
Mm.
honored, very humbled by the interest and the attention, and grateful to be able to share it, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. I mean, fundamentally, good humans adore and love children, and good humans who haven't had a chance to put, a thought or time on themselves for their own healing, through your methods, both of you, they get that chance. Let's just briefly touch on you mentioning your book, which I'll bring up in a second. It's called Keeping Kids Safe. And We're so blessed because at one of my last conferences in America, Galactic Spiritual Informers, this beautiful lady approached me. It's very elegant, demure, quiet, shy lady. And she told me that she herself had come from untold upsets as a child to an adult. But she had funds and she wanted to do good work and feel good and make a difference. And at the time, she'd just seen my video with the children in Uganda and the music school and the musical instruments that we gather donations and give to the children. Because as that if they can't, children in Uganda in certain areas like Kampala, for example, they've got no chance of a minimal education. And what we do is shine a light there. And this lady was very moved by that. And she also asked me who is doing great work for children. Of course, I said, well, Gloria Masters. And I connected you two together. And this great lady, true to her word, has been able to fund a book to every single school in New Zealand, the country. I mean, it's phenomenal, isn't it?
It's outstanding, outstanding.
Mm.
And what an outstanding lady. And we're not going to share her private name, of course, but she does watch this channel. And we love you. We love you. You're a beautiful, beautiful,
I
beautiful gift. You
would
really
so love to meet her one day, actually. Yeah.
And so, some of the positive responses from some of the principals of the schools is outstanding as well. It's just really touching.
give us some examples and tell us more about the book.
Guilty.
Oh, yes. So thanks, Scott. So, yeah, so one of them reached out actually last week and said that with now that they've got a resource like this, they can start educating and planning on how their staff can be enabled to have, I guess, commonality or unity around how they manage disclosure. And the more children that use this hand sign, the more we are looking at ways in which teachers, because teachers are often the first ones to be signalled, um, teachers can actually work to keep them safe. So this principal said it's so good to have it because it's a topic that people aren't that confident about dealing with, as I mentioned earlier. But equally, it's really useful for them as a staff to sit down and have beginning discussions around it. So it's a beginning. It's a roadmap for parents and teachers and other safe adults, I like to call them. And what you may find when you open the book is at the end of each of the modules, so I've got 11 modules in there, is a checklist. And you may find that what you check off will be different to what I do or what Scott does. So by the time you've done that 11 times through the book, you've got a different way you're going to be traversing this. And depending on what you need to discover more about or what you feel quite proficient in. So it's quite unique, it's quite customized, and people tell me they find it invaluable. We had a director of education, I think I told you this, late last year who reached out, and her words to me, her opening statement was, I wish I had seen this book sooner.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
So,
And the
yeah.
book, which we'll show in a moment, is basically in your face without being too in your face, but guiding teachers and adults and children even what to look out for an endangered child who's being harmed at home or elsewhere and not able to communicate verbally, but there's always signals that a child gives off. And you and Scott are traversing the world and making film showing the hand signal. Could you please demonstrate several times and talk us through that hand signal that we want every parent, every adult, every kid to know and recognize, please?
Yeah. Do you want
Well, it's the hand up, thumb across, fingers down. And it's very simple. And as we've discussed with Gloria and I, a lot of children won't necessarily be standing straight in front of someone and go like that. Their hands might be down by their side, so it's not seen by everybody because what we know is that it's really hard for children to verbalize and say, particularly if it's within the family or they've been threatened, or they don't think they're going to be believed. And so, in fact, over the last week, Gloria and I have been working on what to do if you see that hand signal, a bit like a process map, basically.
Yeah, very difficult.
Awesome. And Scott's actually been able to get some quite senior people in New Zealand to adopt this and be able to share it. And the more people we can get to share the sign, the more that children can be taught it and then potentially kept safe.
And I know through all the years of my work, if the hand sign had have been out there, there would have been children who would have been saved. Because sometimes it goes on for years, that sexual abuse.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're scared because there's the grooming and the leading up to it. Now that hand sign would have saved a number of children.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, it's devastating when it's put like that, obviously. And all we can do is what we have now, which is teach everyone. And like you said, every child is not going to be standing there going, hey, it's going to be hidden and we have to have eyes to. But, humans, we have instincts, especially those of us who have gone through horrific violations to our bodies as a child. We grow up with extrasensory perception and abilities because when you're near losing your life over and over and over again, as Gloria can attest, unfortunately, I believe you grow your extrasensory perceptions, which is the primordial body, the fight or flight, the freeze, the flop, or the fawn. I, as a therapist, use those terms to describe the different levels and layers that a person will position themselves in order to survive. And I believe that our extrasensory survival skills are heightened when we've gone through certain things in life. And, people in a position to help need to learn that it's okay and they should really reach out and help and not be afraid, but then you always get, nosy Nelly who can't help but interfere, and actually do harm. It might not be a family who are hurting a child. It could be something else going on, and they'll go report that child might be extracted, and then it gets into a foster situation. Now, I don't know about New Zealand, and I'm going to come to you for this, Scott. The UK is a dog wash. The terrible atrocities to our children over decades, and the biggest muppet that was in charge of child protection services is now the Prime Minister. You couldn't make it up. Unfortunately, that's the truth, that nut job. They call him a wanker. They call it out everywhere that they go in crowds. I don't know if you know what wanker means, but it's not good. Anyway, so Scott, tell us about your insight and knowledge over the years of child protection services. What do you call it over there?
Well, it used to be the Child, Youth and Family Service, and now it's called Oranga Tamariki. And I work closely with them and some of their senior leaders in Auckland. And, they do the best job we can. We do a lot more collaborative work together now around child abuse. I think we used to be siloed and when something happened, we'd come together, but it's too late. But now, a lot of time, our connection is right at the start and we work together. And like I oversee and I'm on the board of a child protection multi-agency centre right across the road from the Auckland Hospital, and with Auckland District Health Board, Oranga Tamariki, and New Zealand Police. And I think, we can still do better. We can always look to improve, but from where we were, say, when I first started out my career working in child abuse, we're light years ahead. But of course, in New Zealand, we've just recently had the Abuse and State Care Royal Commission of Inquiry, and you talked about foster children. There's children who've been put into care over the years who have been abused. And, I've overseen investigations where, schools and whether it be boys, girls, but generally, to be fair, the ones I've worked with, it's been generally boys have been sexually abused by teachers. in some of these schools, and there's been some big inquiries go. And one of the things that really sad for me is that I did a research project with the Auckland District Health Board over, we were looking at 20 years of child sexual abuse. And while it wasn't the subject of the research paper, I was looking as well just at where are these victims now? Well, the number that were alcoholics, were drug addicted, lived in poor relationships, were criminals, the mental health issues, and what was worse and stood out was the suicide.
Mm.
And, from my perspective, the global hand sign, hand in shame back, if we can look after our next generation, we're doing the right thing for society. Because if we don't, what's going to happen in the future?
Mhm.
And it's a tragedy not only for the individual but for the family. Particularly worst case scenario when they commit suicide, and we're aware of a number of cases.
Mm. Yeah, I know it's just the saddest thing when a child has no chance of survival and their soul is crushed and stamped down and shamed and isolated by the adults that are supposed to nourish it and allow it to grow. If that isn't taken care of, then yeah, we do fall into addiction and worse. And it's a sign of, leadership in every country that doesn't focus on its children or its elders, either end and us in the middle, raising to be healthy, to be respectful to ourselves and others. And it used to take a village to raise one child, and now we're all completely isolated and don't have the support we should have. But I do see a return to the older ways. And interesting that the Child Protective Services name in your country is now using the indigenous language of New Zealand. Can you share that name again with us?
Yeah, so Oranga Tamariki. And Tamariki are the children. And yeah,
Lovely.
it's about looking after the children.
And
Yeah.
see the difference there, that the mental shift in now we're honoring our indigenous Maoris, we're not shutting the ancient language under the carpet. It isn't just about it isn't even about white people. It's just about genociding a culture, right? So it's lovely that New Zealand is leading the way. America and England or Britain could take a look at what New Zealand's doing right now in terms of honoring.
Yeah. So,
Mm.
look, from my work experience, I know that child sexual abuse occurs right across, not just lower socioeconomics,
Oh yeah.
particularly ethnicities, it's right across the board, and which is tragic. And it's interesting how Gloria and I, I, I played football as a young guy, and even now I play walking football as an older guy. But
Big football.
Granddad.
yeah, yeah. But of course, when my children started playing, I started coaching, and it's like the English football. That's what I'm talking about. Not talking about rugby. I'm talking about
Yeah,
real football
proper
and
football now.
real football. Yeah, and so then once my children had sort of got to an age where teenagers, I'd already said, I'm not coaching you as teenagers. I don't want to lose that father-son relationship. But always be there to support. But I've carried on coaching. And so for over 30 years, I've coached children and youth. And, there's probably about a dozen police officers, both boys and girls, who I've coached as children, and youth. And I always saw that as being healthy, mentally fit, physically fit, all that sort of stuff. And then I met Gloria, and she's trying to help children from a different perspective, but we've just got the same values,
Mm.
about the next generation.
Yeah, yeah, that's just gorgeous. Yeah, and so important. Again, having a partner alongside is definitely helpful. Let's bring up your book, Gloria, and share it here. I hope we can see that well. Um, There we go. Keeping Kids Safe. It's a really strong cover that people can easily recognize. And this is the book that the wonderful donor, our friend, invested in having funds to put a book in every single school in the whole of New Zealand. Keeping Kids Safe, a roadmap for parents, teachers, and others, a Gloria Masters. And we want to encourage others to help, to do something in your school district, to do something, to connect to Scott Beard and Gloria Masters, to stand alongside them, to help support and promote their programs. This is a global reach out a global love for our children and for families who are suffering, and bringing help and, maybe free therapy to an adult who's stuck, still frozen as a 9-year-old little boy emotionally in a 50-year-old body. And the only way he's got to self-soothe is alcohol because he doesn't have any tools. And a lot of times the men do get overlooked because they've always been expected to be the strong ones as survivors. And it's just such a nonsense when you really, I know two men recently that had a falling out. And I know them both, and I know privately they both would have cried. Of course they would. They're human. It's what we do. We express, we emit, we emote, and there needs to be more kindness there for definite. So let's talk about steps moving forward in terms of the programs you're rolling out, the conferences that you're doing, the gatherings that you're doing. How can we get involved, and what is the plan for this coming year?
Yes, so the great question. So I think, initially, like coming up shortly, we have our Global Awareness Day, which is our third one, and that's run across the world. It's actually the day is always the 16th of June, but what we ask is that people do it on the weekend closest to that date. So because the 16th is a Monday, we're walking at 10 a.m. In New Zealand
On the Sunday.
on the Sunday.
Yeah.
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 And we've got people from your country as well, the US and several others, and all through New Zealand who are joining us on the walk at 10 a.m. their own time. So that's pretty cool. And what that does, Danny, is it helps to share the message, which is, it's peaceful. We're not fighting anything. We're just gently and compassionately bringing attention to the incredible survivors who perhaps have been hidden in the shadows for too long. And I think too, with that, we ask three things on that day. So grab a friend or a group, take a photo, caption it. We are handing the shame back, whatever country or state you're in, send it to us and we share it across our social media. And we also ask on that day that you swap your logo out for ours. So on your Facebook or Instagram, as you know, our logo is the heart handing back, it's going backwards. So we use that and we see that. Actually, that's a really popular thing people do. And of course, it starts a discussion like, oh, how come your profile looks different?
Yeah.
Oh, that logo is handing the shame back because that's what survivors do. So and then the third one, of course, is our global hand sign. And so we ask that people even, hey, talk to one family about this hand sign. You just don't know who you'll save. So that's our big day coming up next weekend.
That's amazing. A couple of things here, I wanted to focus on the front end of our conversation being about the two of you coming together, obviously, because that's always a lovely, feel good, warm, happiness, happy joy. And again, for those that know you, Gloria, and you've been on my channel so many times, for them to know now that you're in a loving relationship with a real man, that's so beautiful. And just, it's just like, wow, she so deserves this love. And then obviously to focus on the great work that Scott has done as a detective and does as a detective inspector, although he's here representing himself as an individual man supporting his partner Gloria Masters today. And, a lot of people that haven't maybe seen, you prior, Gloria, you went through horrific, horrendous abuse thanks to a paedophile in your family, unfortunately, and even his immediate family were also grooming you to be the sexiest little underage child for the men that would pay and women that would pay the biggest money. One of the things that is very apparent is most people would never assume to think that a big old tough gang member, big old muscles and tats and chains and denim or leather and a big old Harley or whatever, would harm a little tiny girl. And in fact, there is a percentage of these big, tough gang members that do actually enjoy hurting and harming little children. And I know that for a fact because that's what happened to you, isn't it?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, and look, I don't think we need to go into detail about it, but suffice to say, and I think as Scott said earlier, it's across all levels in our society. Unfortunately for me, it was part of a gang initiation ceremony, and the people involved. It was very obvious I was a child, and I know gangs today, will refute that ever happens, but yes, it does, and I know of other survivors as well who have experienced this. The point is that what these people choose to do and the way they choose to exploit a young defenseless child speaks everything about perhaps what they have been raised with themselves. And I think part of what we're understanding more and more is that no child begins life evil or bad. It's what happens to them that shapes their behaviour. And I never really look to the child, I always look to the parents and think, yep, how available were you or are you? And I think Scott had done some work and spoken in one of our places in the North Island to a group about this very thing. Those first 1,000 days are so important, but equally, what's happened to someone who is involved in this type of activity? What on earth was their childhood like? And surprise, surprise, it won't be good. It will be full of abuse potentially or violence, family harm, neglect, abandonment, all of those things. And so we've got to really we got to peel the layers back and start looking at what drives us and how we can look at preventing this. So there's so much work to do, Danny. There's so much education. People don't want to believe this happens. We know it does. Every day in our country, there's reports and footage and news about sex trafficking or cults. Is it the 764 cult? It's a global
Yeah.
cult. It's in the UK as well. The FBI have been doing some work on it. And they're also have infiltrated in New Zealand. And some of what that involves is it's satanic ritual abuse, but these children um, are being encouraged to carve that number into their bodies. Like there's just sick stuff happening.
mm,
I don't think it's going away. And with the online world we live in now as well, it's even worse.
mhm,
Yeah, and we see it at
Mm.
work where young people can access porn hubs, porn
Yeah,
sites like Pornhub, from like even from 10 years old. And so what they're seeing on that, and they get to 15, 16 when they're starting their sexual experience, and they're just reverting back to what they've seen on the, like Pornhub and expecting that that's the norm. And someone says no, they don't take a no for an answer. But that's all they're used to seeing. And it's a real problem. Technology is a major issue,
yeah,
mhm.
with these young children.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're left alone so much, children, to their own devices because the way the work world has been structured to kind of eliminate the safety of the family unit and splinter everybody apart. Yeah. You mentioned earlier that across the board doesn't matter who someone is, from the poorest to the wealthiest. This is infiltrated all the way through for many different reasons. And I mentioned my friend Max Lowen earlier, an American girl, now woman, grown up woman who runs a project called Unbroken.
yes.
And yeah, she's just, well, you've all been on my podcast at the same time. I never say podcast, my broadcast at the same time together. And Max was trafficked by a wealthy uncle, and so she'd be taken to Italy every summer, trafficked under the Vatican, saw things beyond expression, a throne to Satan down there. And for the people again, they're like, "Oh, you had me till then, Danny, and then you mentioned that, and now you lost me," because people have their limits of how much they're able to open their minds. But they've got to recognize it's not about you, love, and what you can or cannot handle. It's the fact that this happens, it's happening, and we have to put our big girl pants on and open our eyes and help and be a useful human, as well as get on with our own healing. And Max, again, like I said, she barely survived with her life, like you, Gloria, and has turned that pain and trauma and never was believed. I would believe a child over every adult on the planet because children don't lie, as you know, in that when something truly has happened, right, Gloria?
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, they don't lie. And I think that's one of the things I know that Scott, you had the experience of a child of 9 who years later reached out and said, "Thank you so much," because you believed her right from the start.
Yeah.
And that changes a life. That right there changes a life. It's about believing the children. Eh?
Yeah, it was actually during the
Powerful.
COVID period, and I just got this letter from this, a woman, and she
Yeah.
just said, I've just had the courage to go and get my child youth and family file because I was sexually abused in the home when I was a young girl. She said, and your name's all through it. You believe me. You got me out of there. You saved me. And in fact, we've caught up with her and her husband a few
Yeah.
times now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful.
But that's life changing and it's so powerful for survivors. I don't think people quite understand the courage it takes for a child or teenager to say, "This is happening to me and it's someone you really like," or "This is my dad or my stepdad or Nana or whoever it is." People really struggle with it. So children are left holding it and carrying it and not feeling believed. And I think that's why, to me, this global hand sign is so important because, I was talking to a survivor about it the other day, and she said, "Gloria, if I'd had that, I would have used it. Danny, I would have too. I would have kept signing and signing until someone saw it." Yeah.
Mm. See,
Yeah.
one thing, interesting thing I see, Danny, is with technology today, and we know around the child sexual abuse material that's shared online, and there's a research paper that came out where what it established that up to 85% of online offenders become contact offenders. That's horrendous. Up to 85%. So that just starts because they're viewing objectionable material of child sexual abuse
Yeah.
and they're sharing it and distributing it, etc. And then over time, they need to do more. And that then becomes a contact offending. And so, yeah, so the technology has driven a lot of things and not always for the good.
Yeah. No, it's horrendous. And, I get so worried about, like, I know many other billions do too, of the infiltration of the classroom, the teachers that get close to the children because they themselves are sickos. And I did a broadcast a few weeks ago with two friends, Andrea Fowkes and Mariska Richey, and we focused on the MAPS, which is minor attracted person. Even
Yes.
hearing that term
Yeah.
makes me want to swing violently and beat the shit out of everybody I see who is attracted to little children. It is so sick. It is so insidious. And, some of the inept, chinless wonders, let's say in Britain in politics, and a lot of them have been raised a certain way, sociopathically, removing emotion. It's true. There's so much information, so many cases on these kinds of people, although it can run through everybody, but they don't see anything wrong with it. And there's been a couple that have come out with this kind of disorder who've written soft pornographic books and had them entered into the classroom in Britain. They're reading soft porn to sell the idea that it's okay to jump into bed with your neighbor over the road. Of course, it isn't. I can say that now. The last two times I've said it on my channel, I've exploded because I'm quite unbridled and get in trouble all the time. And the balls, I don't care. We've got to stop worrying about what people think and just speak the truth and speak to these horrific crimes that happen. But yeah, with the whole LGBTQ plus, so the placeholder, ooh, what's the next plus going to be? And gay men and women, they don't want to be part, most of them, of this, this kind of a socially engineered arena. And so many write to me, so Danny, I'm nothing to do with LGB. And I'm like, oh, bless you, I'm not judging you for that. You do you, but it's become a controlled asset, a weaponized thing where a group of people were like, hey, listen, we're gay, we're okay, kind of leave us alone. But then there's all this infiltration. And like I said, the teacher in the classroom and the school board. Just briefly, there was another case in New York where a lady managed to get the school board into court and read one of the dirty, filthy, pornographic books that had been slid during COVID into the classroom so the parents weren't seeing what the children were being brainwashed with. And the judge said, if you do not resign to the school board, you will be arrested for paedophilia. And you bet your arse they all resigned. And that is true. And that's also been covered up. You know what I mean? Just, I don't know whether you've had issues like that in New Zealand.
Is it just
Yeah.
one particular case
Sorry.
I can talk about, and it's been all through our media here, was, and I often say to people, if you know something, see something, or hear something, do something. And this was a father who was in a shopping mall with his young daughter, and he thought an elderly guy filmed up his daughter's dress, took a photo, and he wasn't sure. So he goes to the shopping mall to the office area, and they have a look at the CCTV. And yes, he did take a photo. He reported that to the police. So that's just a little. This guy had taken a photo up his daughter's dress. Now, as a result, that offender was arrested and charged with nearly 200 charges. There were victims from little girls to adult women. There was contact offending right across the board. Now, that one action by that father, he got this, and he had been a teacher,
Hmm.
this offender.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
But I just want to say as well, because that was huge.
Yeah.
And so that's the impact. You think one person can't make a difference? Yes, they can. Using that can help. You just don't know where it could go, but I digress. It was 1987, 1988 when the PIE was shut down. Would you like to ask me what PIE is?
Yeah.
The Pedophile Information Exchange in the UK was shut down. So this is not new. There's always a little bit of a misnomer out there that this child sexual abuse is fairly current or only in the last 20 years. No, this has been going on since time began. But the problem is that more and more of our digital age, AI, technologies that are allowing and promoting exposure of things means that we've got people on the wrong side of it who are using it to create and advent child sexual abuse materials. And we know that AI has the ability to remove clothing off an image of a child and then trade that image. And so one of our key messages recently, which went nuts, was stop posting images of your children or grandchildren online. Don't. You don't know what's going to happen to that image.
A lot of families on, like, say, Facebook, for example, will have a family chat. That's fine.
Yeah.
But if you've got an open profile and you're posting images, who is accessing that? And as we say, with AI now, it can strip those children naked, and then their faces are there, and that
Yeah.
image is then sent
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, and then there are teenagers at school being cruel to each other because there's a lot of dysfunction, of course, in that kind of growth period. Without without abuse, there's a lot of trauma being budding and growing and pubescence and making
Yeah.
videos of each other in these awful ways. And some children cannot handle the embarrassment. It is one thing too much, and take themselves out also. I mean, it's horrendous and it seems out of control, all of that, very much out of control. Isn't it a shame that, let's say if, I was a grandma, which I'm not, and that I had a child that had a child, and how exciting to be able to show that baby, like on Facebook. But then the implications, like you said, of what could actually happen. And then it's on the internet, unless it's physically taken down or purposefully taken down, it's out there forever, isn't it? Those images and people. I can't believe the dim-wittedness in some people. They just believe everything they see. It's unreal to me how they're so like believable to everything they see. It's worrying, it's brainwashing.
I do think though, sorry, Scotty, the Queen is speaking now. I do think though, Queen G,
Know your place, sir.
is that we do have this thing, and you'll have heard me talk about it, I'm sure. I bang on about the same things over and over. But it's that cognitive dissonance, I believe. Like I think most people are inherently good people. But the cognitive dissonance is that when you hear the term child sexual abuse or images online or sextortion or online exploitation, most good people turn away and think, no, that wouldn't be happening to my child or grandchild because it goes against our morals and values and ethics. It's abhorrent. So I understand that. I understand it's very difficult for people, but I'm not here trying to target the children. I'm actually trying to target the parents. We need to start getting the parents and teachers and safe adults on board so they understand how big this is. I mean, we call it the silent epidemic. It's a global issue. It impacts up to recent report we heard in New Zealand was up to 30% of girls and 20% of boys between 12 and 18 years of age are being sexually abused. I don't know about you, but that's a big number.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrific, horrific. Where it comes to your book again, keeping kids safe, that should be in every school as a tool, and again, one book per school. I mean, you do a big assembly on the book, do some slides. It's not difficult, is it, if you've only got one book? But imagine parents watching that want to do something, because often people ask themselves the question, what can I do? It's only me. And I always say, are you having a laugh, John and Doris? Only you. It's all of our voices that matter. So don't be saying that. Without your voice, we can't have more volume. And imagine that, there's a parent or grandparent or a regular human that doesn't even have kids and doesn't have to, is watching this thinking, how can I support? You could buy a ton of books. You could go take them around the schools without even asking permission of the school board, because a loving, caring school is going to accept that book into its library, in for its teachers. And if it's a good headmaster or mistress or whatever the bloody hell we call them these days, don't know, don't care, the head of the school with the responsibility, they should be the ones delivering the information. They should be the ones encouraging parents to get that book at home as well, and for the children to read it. It's like, come on, you've done something amazing. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I know I'm very grateful to have written it, and I love your advocacy. So two things. One person can make a difference. I'm one person and look what I've been able to do. Scott's one person, look what he's been able to do. You're one person. We all have a lot more to us than we realize. Secondly, it's actually, believe it or not, it's not a book for children. It's a book for adults to learn, understand, assimilate the information, and then teach it to their children. It's not for children to read.
Yeah, yeah. So point out
Yeah.
the training, the teaching, the things to look
Yeah.
out for to keep them
Because
safe.
this is a family, a community issue, society issue, global issue. We've got to get the parents and the educators on board so they can understand, and then they can share information with their children and teach their children things like body safety rules. we had recent information from Australia again where pedophiles or perpetrators who are incarcerated were asked a range of questions. And one of the questions was, why, when you had the opportunity, did you not abuse that child or a child? 86% of them came back with that child put up too much resistance, or might have said something like no, or don't touch me, or that's wrong, or that's my private parts, or and made quite a strong
Mm.
gave quite a strong reaction. And that was enough for the perpetrator or pedophile to think, I'm just going to try someone easier. So, for anyone out there who's watching and thinking body safety rules aren't important, can I tell you that could save your child or grandchild? So, again, it's about how we disseminate this information. It's about how we share it. I've kept it really simple in there. One of the modules is on tools for children. So parents, get reading, get teaching. You could just save your child. Were you going to say something?
No, no, I just, like I said at the start,
Yeah.
the children are our next generation. They are so important. And what we're doing with the global hand sign and, around handing the shame back is about looking after our future. Yeah, and from a New Zealand perspective, these children are our future.
Yeah.
We're not doing society a favour if we don't do something to stop the silent epidemic.
Absolutely, completely correct. So let's speak out your contacts, because so many people don't know to look underneath the broadcast for the contact details, which of course I'm going to put, but just to help people who are more kind of auditory. Scott, please go first. How can people connect with you?
Well, ultimately through handing the shame back, because I'm the global ambassador for the global hand sign. So that's an easy place. And of course, Gloria is the CEO of Hand in the Shame Back, and it's a very easy way to connect.
Yep. So if you go on to our website, handingtheshameback.org, all one word, you will find there's contact emails there. People can reach out through that. There's also books and t-shirts like what Scott and I are wearing for survivors, and we know that survivors across the world like to wear these t-shirts on two occasions. One, when they're going to court. There you go. Scott's doing a demo. Look at that, eh?
I see you, I stand beside you, I believe you.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's all we want to hear as survivors. But two occasions, one when they're going to court to have their case heard, is often when survivors want one of these, and also on our Global Awareness Day. As you know, it's number 3 coming up. So that's a really powerful use of that. So yeah, people can reach out through there.
Brilliant. And handing the shame back.
Oh, but we do have another initiative. I forgot. You'll remember this. Because we've had such success with getting the books into schools, we're now wanting to target our early childhood centres so that we get the younger children kept safe as well. So any sponsors out there or anybody who would like to start providing books for our early childhood centres, we have around 5,000 in New Zealand. But the more we can educate our beautiful young children, the more we stand a chance keeping them safe. Hey.
Yeah, and it's also for those teachers, whether it be early childhood or at school, to notice changes in a child. Boy, you used to be so outgoing. Now you've gone back to sucking your thumb. Now you're
Yeah.
really introverted. What's happened?
Yes.
What's going on in your world?
Mm.
And if that global hand sign comes out, then you know. And what we're saying is, first thing to do is acknowledge it so that the child understands, okay, they know.
They've got it. So what Scott just did, because we're getting a hand sign, which is a physical sign, Danny. So what Scott just did, when a child signs to you like that, it's either a thumbs up or okay. And that's all a child needs to know in the first step. that you've seen and received.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
We're working hard behind the scenes to try and get more information out, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course you are. Of course you are. And again, the invitation is there for people to step forward and help you. And I remember, I don't know how many years ago now, I introduced you to someone that claimed to be a billionaire. And then when it
Oh,
went to get 10 books off you and asked you to pay the postage, if you are those people,
my,
please step to the side. We ain't got time for you and your drama to be seen to be doing good. You know, it's
Yeah.
often those behind the scenes that don't want to show their faces that really are the true beloveds that come forward. But we need more people to come and stand beside you two and support you to keep this beautiful messaging and service and safety going
mm,
for our children. Let me come to you, dear Scott Beard, for final words, sir.
Well, for me, handing the shame back, it is about supporting, adults who've been victims of child sexual abuse. But if we can prevent child sexual abuse, then we're saving our communities and our society a whole lot of issues down the track. And so getting the global hand sign out, understanding what it means, and knowing how to respond is key.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you for your great service. And Gloria, final words from you, but also to include the great walk, how again we can get in touch, and the date, June the 16th, please.
okay, so out of all of this, the global hand sign for under 16s, our core objective is to keep children safe. So if a child signs to you, stay with them, be with them until another safe adult arrives. Don't just leave. Stay there, be there. And as Scott has always said, and I've stolen the quote, mind you, you've stolen some of mine. If you see something, do something. Be that adult. Do something. So that's what I want to finish with. But okay, so Global Awareness Day is June 16. If you would like to become involved, reach out to handingtheshameback.org. We will send you a pack with what to do, how to set one up in your area, and we'll also share it across our social media platforms and be honoured to have as many of you as would like to join us from all across the globe because we see you everywhere and yeah, stand with you.
That's amazing. And again, with that handingtheshameback.org, that is the whole entry point into the portal, into your world of safety and care for our beloved children. But the term handing the shame back simply is when a child or an adult, especially a child, has been harmed in the worst ways, they carry a shame that is not theirs. And what you've been doing with your life work, Gloria Masters, from surviving this, you have decided that no, you take that back. You have that because the child was never, ever to carry that shame that was inflicted by a filthy, dirty pedo. And many other names we could say, but we won't because we're trying to be ladylike. No, we're not. Yes, we are. Anyway, Scott Beard, lovely to have you on my channel for the first time. I'm sure we'll do more collabs together. Gloria Masters, as always, an honor to be with you. And I've got over the years better at not bawling and crying every time we get together. So that's a really good sign of maturity on some level, but also a growth in healing as well that is completely visible and for witnessing. So to you guys out there too, healing is possible through growth. Healing is available. Love and support is available. And Gloria Masters handing the shame back alongside Scott Beard here is certainly one way to go. My name is Danny Henderson. I send you love from my heart to yours, and I will see you soon. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks very
Danny.
much.